Welcome to A Fork in Time, the alternate history podcast.
Welcome back to A Fork in Time, everyone, the alternate history podcast. It's Dylan in the host chair, and I have a very esteemed gentleman joining me. Do you have anything to say to the folks at home?
Hi, good people.
All right, we got Chris Capola in the house, everyone. We're going to take a little adventure. Today, we're going to go to a period of time we don't typically cover on this podcast, which is the French Revolution. Given that it's spring, it's kind of summer, spring is come and gone. We're in the heat of summer. We're going to go explore kind of a weird side of the French Revolution and its aftermath today. We're actually going to explore what if the King of France, Louis, I believe the 16th, honestly, at this point, the numbers don't mean anything, so we can just go with it. Louis the 16th, infamously, after the meeting of the Estates General in 1789, and some begins to reform, was essentially put into what amounted to house arrest, first at Versailles and then at the Tuileries Palace. And in June of 1791, Louis and his wife Marie Antoinette infamously attempted to flee France and go into friendly Austrian Belgium. Before Belgium was independent, it was owned by the Austrians, who, it should be noted, Marie Antoinette was one. Her brother was actually the emperor of the Habsburg Austrian Empire at the time. So they're trying to essentially escape from this kind of not yet revolutionary France, but kind of it's starting to lean more that direction to get essentially into what amounts back into friendly territory, so they can try and come back and sort of reinstitute the monarchy. And really, this period is known as the Flight to Varennes, and it all starts really when Louis is denied permission to go to one of his other palaces for Easter, because until that point he couldn't actually quite tell that he was in house arrest, and only when his guards told him he couldn't leave to go to his other palace for Easter did he realize, oh, wait, I'm actually kind of trapped here. So Louis initially was planning with some of his advisors just to go by himself, and Marie was going to go separately. So the real short gist of the plan, they were going to take two light carriages. They were going to split and go kind of their own separate ways, meet up just the French side of the border, and then cross into Austria and Belgium together, and then kind of escape from the sort of, National Assembly Republican kind of forces of the French General Assembly. Unfortunately, and this is where the story just gets absolutely hilarious, Marie Antoinette decides to do Marie Antoinette things, and she basically tells Louis, for a long time now, they had always preferred to travel together. Louis was okay with this plan of splitting up because obviously it means he can get out and, can try and keep his throne. Marie decides, no, they're going to travel together. Well, that nixes the two fast carriages idea, and they've got to get one big carriage because, much like General Sanjurjo in our Spanish episodes, Marie has to bring all of her crap. So they have to get a much sturdier, slower carriage that has all of her royal accoutrement. And to make matters worse, when they're getting ready to start this mad dash, Marie gets lost for half an hour in the maze of the Tuileries Gardens. And so they start half an hour, 45 minutes behind schedule. This all kind of ends by the time, because they're running so late, they start 30, 45 minutes late, and then they get slower as they go. To the point where when they finally get to the town that they were supposed to meet up with their kind of guards in to escort them across the border, the guards had already left because they said, screw this, they're not coming. We're not going to stick around and wait and get captured and maybe killed. This ends up leading to them getting captured when one of the guards at a checkpoint crossing that they try to get through literally looks at, I want to say is a 50 livre banknote, looks at the portrait of the king, and then looks at Louis, and he's like, "Huh, this guy kind of looks familiar." And then that's how they capture it. The In our timeline, this is really what kind of jumpstarts the sort of more extreme kind of Jacobin, revolutionary side of what we understand as the French Revolution.
Like, this is not the French Revolution yet.
No, but this is
not.
This is kind of what jumpstarts that animosity and leads to it. This basically Louis's breakout attempt is what kind of is the first domino that leads to him and Marie getting their heads cut off, and the Committee of Public Safety and all that fun stuff after that. So the idea that we're going to explore today is to go all the way back to the beginning of that story.
So we actually, this was kind of the first. We're doing something new. We're going to try something.
Yeah, we're actually going to, this is going to be two different forks. We're going to do 2 episodes on this topic. So this is the first one. Today, we're going to explore what if, the National Assembly's French vacation had allowed Louis to go to his Easter palace and get out of the Tuileries.
I like National Assembly's Easter vacation. Yeah.
You see what I did there? This is a live look at sometimes how we try to create our episode titles. So we're going to do today's episode is going to be what if Louis was allowed to go to his Easter vacation, which means he's much more copacetic, even if he understands that he's kind of under some sort of house arrest restriction. He may be more okay,
even
with
under
it.
Some kind of observation.
Exactly, because
like he has still people. He's got minders that come with him.
Yeah, but he can still kind of go where he wants as long as he stays in France and doesn't cause too much trouble. And then the other episode that we're going to do is what if this escape plan, this flight to Varennes, actually succeeds and Louis gets out of France. So that's going to be our second episode. But for today, we're going to just say that, the National Assembly and his guards allow him to go to his other palace for Easter. He's much more copacetic. So that's kind of our setup. But really, to really get it started, I'm going to throw it all the way to Chris, because we are recording this on the 4th of July. And the issues that France ran into in the late 1700s really all starts. It's kind of all our fault at the end of the day.
Yeah, I am currently holding up both of my hands to Dylan. I will ask him to do the same so that we can verify. At point of recording, we all still have 10 fingers.
Yes.
4th of July hasn't really kicked off yet.
We haven't started blowing up anything yet, so the freedom celebrations have not begun.
So speaking of blowing up things, we kind of blew up the French budget.
Yes.
Honestly, we wouldn't have started here if it wasn't like on the 4th of July, but whatever. And honestly, it probably wasn't necessarily the American Revolution, because if you look back at the French and Indian or the 7 Years' War, that blew up the British budget, which put enough stress on them.
The whole thing.
Right. It just finally caught up to the French, I guess.
Yes, exactly.
And basically, like, American War of Independence ends 1783. Louis XVI is robbing Peter to pay Paul, trying his best to not have to call the Estates General, because it hasn't been called in, I think you said,
it's like 200 years. The Estates General in France is kind of like the 1300s British Parliament, where it's a thing that exists, but the king doesn't ever want to call it because he wants to do whatever he wants, but he does periodically have to call it.
Because this is the only body that can levy, I believe it's new taxes. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, Louis is pulling a King John, essentially, where he's forced to call the Estates General and basically try to get some kind of new money coming in. And that is what kicks off.
Or also kind of a Charles I.
Yes. Yeah.
Also is in the same situation where he comes up with all of these new things to try and raise money, but eventually he just can't get around the fact that he needs to actually call the Estates General, because basically this is a deal. The Estates General is going to give Louis XVI the taxes, but they're going to want something.
Yeah.
And basically Louis XVI doesn't trust what they're going to want.
Yeah.
He's not comfortable at all with the idea of recognizing, this is this is why it's important to keep track of which Louis this is, because 2 Louis ago,
I love that that's a measurement of time on this episode. 2 Louis ago.
You literally had the Louis XIV saying, "I am the state. It is personally me." That doesn't lead to a compromised mindset.
Yeah.
But at this point, Louis XVI has no options. He calls the Estates General in, and this is, unless you are literally Mike Duncan, who did, an amazing job on the French Revolution. Basically, what you know about the French Revolution is storming of the Bastille, the 3 estates,
Napoleon.
and you might know about the crazy guillotine stuff, and then Napoleon. That's kind of where you go.
Oh, you hear the people sing.
I am literally going to see Les Mis tomorrow, and that is not actually.
It's not.
No, it's like 50 years later.
But that's what everybody thinks that it's about. This.
Yeah. By the way,
that's the French Revolution in a nutshell.
I am going to ask everyone to please feel sorry for the person I'm going to see Les Mis with, because I'm going to be completely insufferable explaining how it's not actually that French Revolution.
Well, actually.
Yeah, actually. Yeah. I'm going to try and save it for the intermissions. Go on.
Yeah. So, but this is kind of the world that we're in when Louis is kind of under house arrest. So he has called the Estates General. They have turned themselves when they refuse to wrap up.
So basically, I am going to kind of throw in. I'm going to be insufferable. We all know this. One, this is where you get the idea of political left and right from. This assembly, basically not quite off with his head yet, but the more Republican, the more limiting royal power sat on the left side of this meeting.
Mm-hmm.
The right side of it was more
the conservative kind of.
We're okay with there still being a king kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's still where left and right come from. Basically, they break down the estates system. They say they get enough of the second estate, kind of the priesthood, who are not necessarily all rich cardinals. Some of them are village priests. So they side with the third estate. Some of the enough of each estate of the other two side with the third. They take something called the tennis court oath, where they say, all right, we are not going to disband until we come up with our solution to this issue.
Yeah.
And they sit down and start coming up with what they want the new French polity to look like. And that and it turns into what we're going to, a really important document for us. It's the Constitution of 1791.
Yeah.
So Bastille stormed, the assembly meets. They say, listen, we're going to take a breather. We're going to come up with a deal, come up with a plan, and we're going to promulgate that. And while we're doing that, Louis, just chill. We don't ask a lot of you.
He's agreed in principle to the concept of changes. Now they're just cooking up what exactly is going to be done. And in terms of the timing of all this, just so that y'all understand, the day after the Bastille was stormed in 1789 is when they create the committee that's going to, this constitutional committee, to start figuring out what all this is going to do. The flight to Varennes is in June of 1791. This constitution gets adopted in September of 1791. So by the time Louis is, in our timeline, trying to get out of the country, he knows enough of the gist of what's happening. And actually, there were some letters in his correspondence that indicated he was perfectly okay with basically all of what they were going to propose.
And kind of I don't know how much of this is in the letters, but there's kind of the suggestion that he had been almost negotiating with Mirabeau, one of the members of the convention, to say, listen, not just I'm going to accept this. Actually, engaging with them and saying what he would find acceptable.
Yeah, like this is a plan nobody's trying at this point, at least in the people that are actually in charge. Nobody's actively trying to completely get rid of the monarchy, to completely to use a bad word for the context we're talking about, to revolutionize the French government. They're trying to come to a compromise and figure out a way that these estates who are perfectly happy with a monarchy, if they can get more of a say in things and some ability to exercise what we would understand as kind of some general government rights. So that's basically in this alternate timeline we're proposing. Louis, because he can go hang out at Easter and chill with his family, he's still in the Tuileries, just hanging out, chilling, doing retired French king things. When they come up in September with this constitution and say, hey, here's what we're going to propose. And Louis adopts it. So now, September of 1791, France is a constitutional monarchy, much kind of closer to sort of a British style monarchy a little bit later down the road.
Very close to the British model.
I would actually say this French constitutional monarchy is probably more of a modern constitutional monarchy than Britain at this exact moment in time, because this is still King George before he goes completely crazy. So he's actually kind of more autocratic than I think Louis would have been under this new system. Not by a ton, but Louis would have had slightly more constraints on stuff.
The thing is, you're always arguing about it's always an issue of like the person in the throne.
Yes.
But it's a very recognizable. I mean, like there are European countries that have monarchies today.
Yeah. So I think it really gets kind of interesting, because if we have a sort of everyone's at least kind of copacetic constitutional monarchy, this is before a lot of the crap really hits the fan that starts all of these interminable wars that France gets into the next 20 years.
We talked a little bit, and I just want to follow a couple of things. After Louis is caught and returned, I think one of the key moments is there's a riot in Paris.
Yes. That
is violently put down by the National Guard, led by
Lafayette.
By the way, I made this comment earlier off and whatever. Lafayette is kind of the French Santa Anna. Like Lafayette was involved in the American Revolution and is active all the way up until literally when Les Mis actually happens. Like 50 years. Okay. Yeah. And the key of that is like the only way I could describe it to an American is maybe like Kent State. Like the use of violence and citizens being killed by the state is shocking to France. And once that is broken, and then you have a lot of, you have the Brunswick Declaration, the Pilsen's Declaration, where basically Great Britain, Austria, Prussia are saying, hey, France, if you touch a hair on the head of Louis XIV, we are going to raise Paris. I don't think that's even paraphrasing much at all of what these say.
No, it's basically they heavily hinted that they were going to invade if anything were to happen. Because you have to remember, Marie Antoinette's brother is the Emperor of Austria. So that and also on the French royal family is a direct attack on
all of these people are royals themselves.
Yes, yeah. Everybody's got an interest in keeping the system the same, but also, it's kind of like I can pick on my brother, but you can't. It's that old family dynamic.
And so a lot of these things that happen almost immediately after the flight to Varennes and when he flees are what makes the French Revolution so French Revolution-y. So before that, you have like not to compare it too much, but there's the sense in the United States of like, hey, we sat down and we came to our agreement about the Constitution and these things.
Yeah.
That is still a possibility in France.
Mm-hmm.
The flight to Varennes is what makes it like not
really a possibility anymore.
Yeah. You know, you still have like you have the Robespierres out there. They probably are writing pamphlets saying we should not have a king, all of these things. What they are not doing is writing pamphlets saying the king should not be alive anymore.
Yeah.
So it's what we, you know, to kind of get back on track here, we think that the French Constitution of 1791 might survive. Is that kind of the basic principle? Is that kind of what you're saying here?
Yeah, I think it's going to be the basis for the new government. I don't know if it would be kind of like you know, an Articles of Confederation, and then they have to go retry a few years later with a constitution, you know, kind of like what happened in the United States. But I think at the very least it would be the building block of whatever this new style of government is going to be.
The American Constitution comes in I want to say 1788. Because counting back, that's George Washington's first election.
Yeah, 1786 is when the Constitution was signed. Okay.
So it's basically around this time as well.
Yeah, so they actually have the U.S. Constitution as a document that I'm almost certain they would have looked at in some way, shape, or form. Especially because you also have to remember Thomas Jefferson is still he's only been gone from France for like 3 years. Mm-hmm. So these people, some of them have actually talked to Ben Franklin and Thomas Jefferson and John Adams about some of this stuff. So this is all kind of in the same sort of general, you know, no taxation without representation kind of political theory melting pot that's going on here. But I think the reason why I brought up the foreign policy situation is I think that's the first big direct impact is if Louis XVI stays as a constitutional monarch, you don't have this hostility, whether it's outright or veiled, between the French government, the Austrians, the Prussians, the British, more than the French and the Prussians don't get along anyway. But everybody's much more.
It's funny you say the French and the Prussians don't get along anyway. We talked about there's got to be a war.
Yes, at some point there's going to be
every 10, 15 years in Europe at this point.
It's just going to happen.
It's Austrian secession. There's Spanish secession. There's 7 years. There's all. It's going to happen. But if you look, this is kind of like Europe at this point is kind of the traditional balance of power.
Yeah.
And you're talking, you know, it's interesting you said how much the French hate the Prussians because they were allies before the 7 Years' War during the War of Austrian Secession. Mm-hmm. And at one point they just flipped.
Yep.
Austria becomes allied with France.
Yeah.
Prussia becomes allied with Great Britain. But what this moment did, what, you know, the aftermath of the flight to Varennes did is who was on France's side during the war of the First Coalition? Nobody. Mm-hmm. This, you know,
putting aside some noises from Thomas Jefferson, maybe.
Some noises, but not like
no real
right
groundswell of support.
Right. This almost broke the European balance because everybody lined up against France, and they actually won.
Yeah.
You know, Napoleon happens. None of that happens.
And actually, I think, ironically enough, I think a war of the French succession might be the first thing that comes up because I'm looking at Louis XVI's children, and his first two sons both died around this time. So his first son died 40 days before the storming of the Bastille. Mm-hmm. His second son died in 1795. 5, both from illness. Like they weren't executed or anything. But his second son died from illness. Now, it's, you know, Catholic French monarchs. They're gonna pop out a few more kids, but these are the only two children, the only two sons that he was able to have. And if you remember from our Spanish episodes, when I went on that detour about the sort of difference between the Carlist and the Alphonsist Spanish successions, the French have a very kind of male focused line of succession. So the fact that Louis XVI has no sons is going to be a problem, especially if he continues to not have any sons, which, you know, even if there's an infant, there's going to be a problem of some kind of succession before the kid gets to be, you know, at least remotely close to taking the throne. So I can almost see some kind of dispute over French succession somehow being what kicks a war off in, say, the late 1700s or the early 1800s.
So here's what I am going to kind of be a little bit of a pain about. You've got to think about Philip Egalite.
Oh, yeah. Philip Egalite. That's an interesting one. That's good. I like that. So do you think you'd have like a Philip Egalite claim versus whoever, if Louis has another son?
Well, no, what I think you would have is stop. I can't do this to you people. We need to talk about Philip Egalite. We need to talk about who this person is, because the fact that we call him Philip Egalite is very interesting in all of. He is he a brother?
I think, he's one of Louis's brothers.
He's a younger brother of Louis. So he isn't necessarily taking over, but basically he, in our timeline, comes out and is like, you know what? Like, yeah, that's kind of messed up. And we need to kind of, you know, reform, and he is a supporter of the revolution. The reason he's known as he's known as Louis Philippe II, but the reason as soon as I said Philip Egalite, Dylan, his eyes lit up when I said that. He's like,
so he was the Duke of Orleans. He was in the Estates General of 1789, and he was actually pretty liberal. And so he was running around with, Mirabeau and some of these other guys, Lafayette,
and was very pro-revolution to the extent that he gave up the name.
He gave up his royal house so that he became known as Philippe Egalite.
Right. And so you could absolutely see they were cousins,
by the way, not brothers.
Okay. He could almost be like the French William of Orange.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Okay. Which makes sense because he is, not to get too into the weeds of the French dynasty, but, Philippe Egalite, Louis Philippe II, was a member of the House of Bourbon Orleans, not a direct Bourbon. So he's a cadet branch of the family. So he does have this kind of, Stuart versus Orange kind of weird, relation, but not cohesion.
But he has a claim.
Yeah.
And if Louis dies without a male heir, who would get to make such a decision?
Yeah. And that's
probably a National Assembly type.
Probably. And he at this point he was I forget what the French phrase is, but he is essentially the most important royal personage outside of the direct royal family.
I think the Dauphin. That might be the
Dauphin is the heir apparent. So the Dauphin is the title for whichever prince is the heir to the Kingdom of France.
Okay.
So Louis XVI's two sons, as they successively died, the next one would have become the Dauphin of France.
And once the last one did,
then it's an open question, because I think the Dauphin has not normally been used for an outside of the direct family appointment, but I could be wrong.
Right.
But either he's going to present this claim, and then My question, and for my foreign policy expert Chris here, is in terms of the outside powers that sets up Austria. I think is going to be the natural proponent of whoever is not with Philip.
Correct.
So Louis the 16th's
Probably,
baby son or whatever.
Well, keep in mind, if you I promise I'm not going to get too into it. The War of the Spanish Succession, which might have been the Queen Anne's War to the Americans you're thinking about, was basically over whether Maria Theresa could become Empress of Austria.
Yeah.
There was a dispute over whether a female could ascend to the Austrian throne. So here, what we're setting up, the War of the French Succession, is over whether when one of Louis XVI's daughters could become the Queen of France, or whether Orleans
is going to be the male succession. Yeah.
So that's the. Let me be perfectly clear, because I think the Austrian succession is one of the first examples of like, listen, this is what we're saying it's about. It's actually because I want Silesia. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So I think, you've got one side of the French, you've got with the Austrians, and then who does Philip Egalité turn to? Does he turn to
Great Britain?
Do you think the British rather than the Prussians?
Here's the thing. Once things get too hot in France, in our timeline, things get too hot for Philip Egalité in France, where does he flee to? He flees to London.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, I forgot about that.
And if you look at what he is doing, what he is standing up for, what the window dressing of his claim is, he's basically to be a constitutional monarch.
Yeah.
The other point I think it's important to make here is a lot of people have in their minds like Britain and France are always going to hate each other. Why are Britain and France always fighting with each other?
At one time, it's usually colonial.
It's colonial. What colonies are they fighting over? France lost all of the colonies that they fought over in the 7 Years' War. Except
for one. There's still one that France has that Great Britain might be interested in.
Okay.
And it runs on one side of the Mississippi River. Because Louisiana hasn't been sold yet.
Louisiana has not been sold yet.
So, that's really and Haiti, I think, has Haiti become independent yet at this point?
No, but that's a really good question.
Yeah. So those are the two big ones, at least in North America, which Britain is still at this point.
I look at it and say this, and I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
I think first we should talk about Haiti. What happened in Haiti in our timeline, and why, and the importance that has to, because I want to get back to Louisiana about this. Haiti is basically a French colony. It's a slave colony. It is heavily.
It's a sugar gold mine.
It is
the reason why, it makes all of the money of the French colonial empire at this point.
And the Haitians look to what the United States has done, look to what Britain is saying, and by the way, look to the French Declaration of the Rights of Man and say, why doesn't that apply to us? And in our timeline, and again, credit Mike Duncan, an amazing, different entire series on the Haitian Revolution. Different groups within Haitian society rose up and drove out the French. And Napoleon tries to take it back, et cetera, but he can't. Yeah. And once they lose Haiti, that's why Napoleon sells
Louisiana. Yeah,
because
he's got nothing. He's got no.
No offense left to our Texas listeners. Actually, you're not part of it, but maybe 5 miles from your house is.
Oh yeah, no, actually, so one of the fun things about the city of Memphis is we have flags on the river, and it is of all the colonial territories that once controlled this part of the Mississippi River. So you actually see, and it always throws people because it's not the modern French flag, it is the fleur-de-lis of the Bourbon French kings, is one of the flags that gets flown on the Mississippi River. Because
it's the other side of the Mississippi from you.
It is, yeah.
But none of that matters to France.
Yeah.
Napoleon is like, you know what, whatever, just get rid of it. So, I mean...
Well, at this point, looking at the timeline, so the Haitian Toussaint Louverture starts kind of the earliest parts of the Haitian Revolution in August of 1791, right as this is all happening.
And here's the other question I have, which is, how does all of this change that we've been talking about in terms of not having a reign of terror, not having all of these other things, how does that change? Does that change how France deals with Toussaint Louverture?
Well, so my immediate instinct is if you don't have a reign of terror and all this other stuff, if you have a sort of more cohesive French government, especially given the sort of background of the whole reason why the Estates General were called, which is about taxes. I think if you have a more cohesive French government, they are going to be much more focused on Haiti in the early 1790s because this is the easiest way for them to make money to fix their tax problem.
Okay.
They don't necessarily care. Louisiana's going to do Louisiana things, but Haiti is the thing that they absolutely have to keep just from a revenue perspective. It's kind of like in some of our episodes, we've talked about how important India was to the British further on down the line. That's kind of, from an economic perspective, that's kind of what Haiti is to the French in the late 1700s.
But the question I have is this. Okay, how do they go about doing that? Because there's two ways of looking at this. The first way would be, well, if they don't have to fight Valmy, if they don't have to fight literally all of Europe at the same time, are they able to send more troops, be more brutal, and actually take back Haiti? Or, as a compromise government, do they make a deal where Toussaint Louverture is now governor of Haiti? He's still going to pay the taxes. He's still going to have, I don't want to say commonwealth, but some kind of, because one of the key points they talk about in the 1791 is federalism versus centralization.
Yeah.
And would the French state have allowed that, which of those two routes do you think the French take?
So my immediate reaction is I think this is going to be the same problem that the southern United States runs into with the Declaration of Independence. That phrase, all men are created equal. Well, exactly what men does that apply to? I suspect one, given the nature of Haiti's importance to the French economy, and two, I'm going to put this as delicately as I can, given the
importance of the institution of slavery to the French economy, to the
I was going to say,
economy.
Given the skin color of the average Parisian versus the average Haitian, I think the French are going to be, they'll make some noises about like, oh yeah, equality, we'll give you some representation. They're never going to mean it. They're just going to go full bore colonial oppression because they can make those noises down the road, but for right now they cannot lose Haiti because they need the money so bad.
Okay.
So I think Haiti is, unfortunately, I see if they can beat Louverture, I see him being imprisoned, being executed, Haiti essentially reverting 20, 30 years in terms of treatment, just essentially just force everybody back to the sugarcane fields, make it a gold mine again, get the money printing so that they can sort out all the stuff where to the French perspective, the stuff in the France that actually matters, which is, Paris, the Kingdom of France, not their colonial backwater in the Caribbean that's full of mosquitoes and sugar.
Okay.
So I think that's the question. The real interesting part of that is, depending on how long this takes, I can very much see if they can't get it done by the time this French succession crisis kicks off, I can very much see Philip Egalite using Haiti as a bartering chip for British support.
So
because
you're saying
the British
Haiti
have Jamaica and all that other stuff in the Caribbean.
Oh, actually, I think Haiti might become a French Scotland.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay, I see that.
Because if Toussaint's up in the mountains,
yeah,
when Philip Egalite needs to make his alliances, he brings him in.
Okay,
he does go the other route.
Yeah,
because the let's call them the Bourbon and the Orleanist.
Yes, yeah.
Because the Bourbons are not going to negotiate with them. Well, that means the Orleanists want to. And ideologically, the Orleanists are the ones who were writing things about the rights of man and everything.
Yeah, it's a much more natural tack for Philip, I agree.
And so I think maybe they just write off Louisiana.
Maybe that's the bartering chip.
That's because you're right, they're not going to get, but they have no problem giving up Louisiana. Or also, I don't necessarily think the British are actively wanting Louisiana.
No, I think the British would be intrigued by it more from the sense of, because this is still so shortly after the Revolution, hemming in the Americans.
And maybe
and going up against the Spanish. I mean, this is before the explosion in Havana.
The complete collapse of the Spanish.
Yeah, they're still around a little bit, you know.
I actually think this might be an interesting thing. Maybe this is kind of a base for Tecumseh.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
As wide-ranging an episode as we've ever done. I haven't even mentioned Edmund Burke yet. I am going to.
I'm sure you will. I'm just letting you cook on this episode.
Yeah.
But I think so. I basically that. The real question, I guess, to kind of bring all this back into the sense of a timeline here. So, if we do have this kind of French succession crisis, I guess the question is, kind of around the year 1800, is who ends up coming out on top of that at the end of the day? Do you think it's Philip Egalite with his British support, or do you think it's going to be the Austrians in support of the Bourbon sort of infant crown? Because also this is kind of getting to the beginning. It hasn't really started yet, but this is kind of right around when you start having the animosities between the Austrians and the Prussians over kind of who is the real top dog now that the Holy Roman Empire is kind of on the out.
Not quite. Remember what you're thinking about in terms of the end of the Holy Roman Empire and the rivalry between Prussia and Austria here. The War of Austrian Succession was a war. Austrian and Spanish were between, and 7 years were between Prussia and Austria. The other thing is this: what led to the end of the Holy Roman Empire?
I mean, immediately it was Napoleon and the Confederation of the Rhine, but
Napoleon destroying, all of that. That doesn't happen.
No, but the Holy Roman Empire has been kind of a waning institution.
The Holy Roman Empire is stronger than Spanish.
I mean,
I'm just making. I'm not
gonna argue. But the analogy I was going to use is in our Toulouse episode when I talked about the Byzantines, kind of having multiple dead cat bounces on the way down. That's at this time period. That's kind of how the Holy Roman Empire is, because in this new age of sort of constituent assemblies and things like that, the elector system doesn't really work because it's not really a government. It's just a prestige title at this point, essentially.
Right.
So,
I mean, what I was saying, I guess the other point, there's already an ongoing, and I think
yeah,
but two things. One, I think this is an interesting thought. If you have France basically reconciling Great Britain,
mm-hmm.
who are the Hessians? Or where is George actually from?
The Netherlands.
No.
William, yeah, the House of Orange?
George.
Oh, no, George. Yeah, he's from, God bless.
Hanover.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, so
they're German.
Northern German coast.
North Germany.
Yes. So you think the Austrians are going to get edged out?
Maybe? I think what you could easily see, I mean, there's kind of a sense of, I would think if France, because they don't have an empire in the Americas, they just hold Haiti.
Yeah.
They don't hold Quebec. They don't have any interest in along the Mississippi. They've lost Pondicherry in India.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have friction points with the British.
Yeah.
So I think you could easily see a rapprochement with them. And who was on the British side in the 7 Years' War?
The Prussians.
Russia.
Yeah.
And who were the mercenaries that the British hired to come? The Hessen.
Yeah, from
North
Hessen.
Germans.
Mm-hmm.
So you could easily kind of see a alliance there against Austria.
Yes, and at this point in the 1790s, Prussia has knocked out. They've just partitioned Poland for, I think, the second time. Poland, Lithuania.
I'm trying to remember that because keep in mind the partitions of Poland are 93 and I think 97. So I want to be very careful with that because that is kind of we're changing a lot and a lot of people are moving around but
okay. What I'm kind of getting at is if you have, a Prussian who at this point, no, go ahead.
I'll say it. I think what you have is the thing we haven't talked about is Catherine's Russia.
That's actually kind of where I was going.
Yeah.
Because if you have Austria kind of getting edged out by France and Prussia and Britain, their natural kind of tendency is going to turn to the other direction, to Russia, as kind of the natural counterpoint to the Prussians at this point, whose attention has mostly been east in the direction of Poland and Lithuania. For this immediate 10-year span, because this is right around when the partitioning of Poland starts happening.
If you look at a map, and I think this is going to be key, if you look at a map of even Germany right up until World War I, it looks almost like a horseshoe with kind of Russian Poland cut out of it.
Yeah.
The northern coast of it along the Baltic is like Junker Heartland.
Yeah.
It's not going anywhere. That southern part of the U is Silesia.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
That is what the War of Austrian Secession was fought over. That is what the 7 Years' War in European continent was over. I think that Silesian area could be what we're looking at here. That may be lost. That is probably not German.
Okay.
Russian that turns into Germany.
Yeah,
here's the interesting thing. I think the other thing is we didn't talk enough about what Napoleon did to nationalism in Europe.
Yes. That's because the revolutions of 1848 are going to be very different if they even happen anywhere.
By the way, revolutions of 1848 still not what Les Mis is about.
Nope.
What?
But I think nationalism is a good thing because that is one of these things that really, in this timeline we've created, because we don't have Napoleon in the position that he was in, it's completely changed the board for a lot of stuff.
Hold on. I've got a fun thing.
Uh-oh.
Let me cook. I think this might accelerate German nationalism. And the other part of it, the other battlefield between France and Austria forever was what?
The Alps, Italy, northern Italy.
Northern Italy.
Are you going where I think you're going here?
What do you think? I'm going to let you guess.
So I think you're going to have a certain Corsican battery commander come in.
Who, by the way, thought of himself as Italian.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, that's where I thought you were going.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, I like this. Keep going. I want to.
Let me pause for a second. All of the disruption because of the Reign of Terror and all of these other things. When Napoleon comes to power in France with his 18th of Brumaire, whiff of grape shot, there's this sense that he's the firm hand that the nation needs.
Yeah.
That does not exist if you don't have this,
because at this point he's back in Corsica when all of our stuff kicks off.
Right.
So he's back at home.
And he did support the revolution.
Yeah. Because at the time he was kind of flirting with Corsican nationalism.
Uh-huh. And I think it's very believable. I mean, where were his first victories?
Yeah.
Italy, northern Italy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he could really rise to prominence as an Italian fighting in the French service against the Austrians in a war of French succession.
Yeah.
And him being him, he could probably parlay that into some kind of...
He becomes like an early Garibaldi?
Almost like he becomes his brother.
Oh, yeah.
He's the French client in Italy.
Yeah, exactly. And probably kind of a northern Italy, like Sardinia, Piedmont, kind of Milan, and because the Sicilies are kind of still their own thing at this point.
Remember, the Sicilies were what family?
At this point?
Bourbons.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I didn't realize that. I forgot. So that's okay. Yeah. It all ties together.
It really does. Well, okay. When you only, it's kind of like a small town in West Virginia. When you only got 3 families running everything. Well,
that's a fair point. Yeah. Just apologies to our European listeners who just got compared to a small town in West Virginia.
You know what? They set out their hat. They got rid of anyway.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah, that's interesting. So you have essentially constitutional French client state monarchies maybe in Italy and then Austria. What would do you think
Italy and Germany?
Yeah, Italy. Well, I mean, I'm thinking. Sorry, I didn't.
Northern Germany, I guess.
Yeah, I'm more thinking of what's going to happen to Austria.
Okay.
If so, say they lose this succession war, Philip Egalite becomes the king on the French throne.
Mm-hmm.
The Austrians
lose northern Italy.
Yeah.
Lose some they might wind up gaining Silesia.
Yeah.
They might wind up losing some influence in North Germany.
Mm-hmm.
However that works out.
Yeah. I'm more thinking kind of the rest of their empire, because at this point, the Austrian hegemony has always been, even before it was the dual monarchy of Austria and Hungary, it's always been this kind of weird mishmash. I think at one point the Austrian army in Franz Ferdinand's day spoke 14 different languages.
Yeah.
So this is an empire.
Well, they just lost their Italians, but
yeah. But they still have all of the Balkans, 8 different countries that are in there.
Mm-hmm.
They've got the Hungarians, they've got some of the Czechs and the Bohemians, they've got Silesia and Galicia, this little chunk of Poland. Like they have an empire that if you want to start hinting towards, the rights of all men and egalitarianism and sort of proto-nationalism, they are the polity that is the most right for that kind of messaging.
That's just because we got rid of a lot of the others that were.
True. Yeah. But
we just merged a bunch of those together.
You play the board that you have.
But here's the one thing though. Here's what I think might be happening there. You're right. But what I want to think about is Russia. And thinking about like a post-Waterloo kind of Holy Alliance type of thing.
Yeah.
Austria, like you said, is going to be dependent on Russia for help in this war of French succession. They might lose, but I think Russia is still going to kind of be what it was in our early 19th century, kind of a bulwark of, no. When you step out of line, you are met with Cossacks.
Yeah.
And in 1848, Russia invaded Hungary, sent troops in to keep the Habsburgs on the throne.
Yeah.
I think you see a lot of that. I think you see
the Russians basically bail the Austrians out.
Not only do the Russians bail the Austrians out, but the Russians kind of like push the Austrians to take the Russian solution to the problem you just laid out.
Yeah. Okay. So that kind of sets up, I guess, to think of our sort of grand stage. You've got kind of a more constitutional Western Europe.
Like what we consider Western Europe is almost modernist.
Yes.
Almost like what we consider modern
constitutional monarchies, whereas
almost 100 years earlier, by the way.
It's Eastern Europe that is the more kind of autocratic, old school.
I mean, it's really weird to think about this, but the line we just drew is almost the Iron Curtain.
Yeah. And I mean, the Prussians are going to do Prussian things. So they're, but
you know what? Here's the one thing though that I thought was interesting to think about. That at some point I'm going to do an episode entitled Prussian Things. Prussians doing Prussian things. That was amazing. The Prussian king has a crown from the gutter.
Yes.
For those of you familiar with that term, in the revolutions of 1848, they wanted to make the king of Prussia basically like king of Germany.
Mm-hmm.
And Bismarck said no, because he said, if you are given the crown by a parliament, that parliament is the center of power.
Mm-hmm.
You are the center of power. You are the state. And because he turned that down, and because of the way that Germany was unified, that put an imprint on the German Empire.
Yeah.
Like it was a Prussian state. That is not the truth. That is not how this happened.
Not the case in this. Yeah.
Right. So I think I'm not even convinced, by the way, that this might be an interesting thing. And maybe Prussia, Austria, and Russia, maybe Prussia's not on the same side as I
think they would start, but they might switch relatively quickly.
And maybe it's not a Hohenzollern on the throne.
Oh, okay.
Of a Germany.
Yeah, do like a Bavarian.
No.
Oh, you're thinking more like Großdeutschland?
I'm thinking like a North German Confederation, like somebody from like one of the other houses.
Yeah.
Like, frankly, Albert.
Oh, yeah.
Victoria's Albert.
Yeah. Of Saxe-Coburg.
Yeah. Like, there are plenty of liberal
there's
North German princes.
Plenty of states in there.
Yeah. Doesn't necessarily have to be a Prussian. And especially, I understand, the more we talked about it, I think Prussia, because, by the way, Prussia was also a very important part of that kind of Holy Alliance.
Yes. Well, in Prussia, historically, if you go back to the Middle Ages, Prussia has been always kind of the eastern, almost Polish part of Germany, not the central part of the Holy Roman Empire.
Right. Right.
So I can almost see the Prussians, if that I can at least see kind of a tension between sort of the Western electors.
I don't know, a federal republic of those Germanys.
I'm more thinking not like a federal republic, but I'm thinking.
By the way, that was not a thought about the constitution of this polity. That was a joke about the fact that it's basically West Germany that we're talking about.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm thinking like almost like a Rhenish republic, almost a confederation of the Rhine, but not in the Napoleonic sense.
Right.
You get some of these other electors with Austria's backing to push against the Prussians and keep them
claiming Germany.
Yes.
So that creates future tensions. But
yeah. But that puts us in an interesting kind of early 18th and mid 18th century
where like all of the nations have been moved up 50 years.
Yes, some politically, but also the sort of balance of powers is completely different, and some of the things that kick off the stuff that happens in the back half of the 1800s and the 1900s, the motivations may still be there, but the animosities are against and from completely different people. So the chessboard is completely different.
It is. The one thing I'm going to say, and I think this is interesting, is the one thing about the 19th century. So many things go into it, but I think, one of the things we talked about was, man, there's war every 15 years in Europe at this point, and so I think what we might have is by consolidating some of these nations, we might have created enough of a multipolar situation where there's animosities, but there is maybe a balance.
Yes. Yeah, like this is something that like I can see someone like Metternich or Bismarck having a field day with in terms of all the geopolitical realpolitik that can be done. So that's interesting. I think we've created, for just by the ability to give a French king his Easter vacation, we've really created a very different Europe out of all this.
Yeah.
So it's amazing. This is the moral of the story: is always take your vacations.
Don't give back the PTO. Yeah.
So I think that is probably kind of a good place to end it, since we've kind of done the immediate aftermath. And this is one of those that the implications, I think, are kind of more fascinating than some of the direct actually what happens. But any final thoughts as we're wrapping up?
Not really. Nothing really jumps to me. I mean, we did what we do best, which is just completely change everything.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's the beauty of alternate history, is we can change whatever we want. So I think that about does it. So thanks everybody for tuning in. Chris, we have one thing we always like to say here, and that is, if you see a fork in time, what should you do?
Take it.
All right. Thanks everybody. Have a good one.
Thanks for listening to A Fork in Time, the alternate history podcast. Learn more and provide feedback by visiting our website at www.aforkintimepodcast.com. Connect to us on Facebook at facebook.com/aforkintime, or follow us on Twitter at AFIT Podcast. If you want to support the show financially, visit our Patreon page at patreon.com/aforkintime. We hope you will join us next time.